Okay.
All right. Doing it. Okay, so I'm going to try to talk loud, but if I'm not talking loud enough, just give me some sort of signal, so I'll amp up the volume. But like Lamb said, I'm Melanie. I'm a Coldwell Banker agent, and this right here is Chris. He's with United Home Loans. He's the mortgage guy, and we're super excited to be here. We've wanted to come and do this at Grubhub for a while, so this is definitely a big day for us, I would say. So our presentation, So You Want to Buy a Condo, we started doing this in October of last year, and we really just saw a need for education in the marketplace. Most people, they don't teach you how to buy a condo in college. They don't teach you in your adult life, really. The only way you know how to go through this process is if you do it and kind of go through the motions and learn as you go. So we said, hey, let's meet people where they're at, and let's teach them ahead of time so that in the next couple of months or years, they go to buy a condo, they already have a pretty good overview of how it's going to work. So that's where we're coming from. We're going to keep it pretty high level just because there's so many nitty-gritty details that we could get into, and for the purpose of keeping your attention, I'll try to be broad. Okay, so first, a little bit about Chris and I. So I'm Melanie, the top one, obviously. I'm from Hinsdale, which is about 40 minutes west of the city, and I lived in Lakeview for the past 3 years, and I just bought my first condo in the Gold Coast. So I'm a new Gold Coast resident. If anyone lives there, see you on the streets. It's super exciting. I'm a Coldwell Banker agent, like I said. I was 2015's Rookie of the Year. I am communications chair for the Women's Council of Realtors, and I'm a young professionals board member for the Small Business Advocacy Council. So those two things are kind of my points of involvement outside of real estate. I graduated from DePaul. I studied journalism, which is kind of funny because now I'm in real estate, but still I end up using skills that I got in college in this job constantly. So it was definitely a good thing to have. And then lastly, I am a blogger. I'm one of those. And I write about real estate and life and Chicago and all that good stuff on my website. And Chris, you want to go through your little points?
Thank you all for coming out here again. Melanie's kind of a tough act to follow, as secret, but a little bit about myself. I was raised in Hinsdale, graduated from Hinsdale Central, went on to Colgate, got my PA in economics. So that kind of applies over to the mortgage side of things with numbers. I have been in the mortgage business since 2011, and my current company, United Home Loans, is a local family-owned mortgage banking group based out of Westchester. We also just opened an office down in West Town, so expanding our Chicago presence here. We do everything in-house, so we process, we underwrite, we close the loan in-house to make the process as smooth as possible for the client. I currently live in Glen Ellen with my wife and 2 kids, and if you're looking to get a little more background on how clients have experienced the mortgage process with us, I encourage you to check out my Yelp page and get an idea from there. So I'll pass it over to Melanie on maybe some reasons for why you want to buy a condo and some data on the current housing market.
Cool. All right. So to kick us off, we're just going to talk a couple reasons to even consider homeownership in general. So first of all, rents are going up like crazy in Chicago. Raise your hand if you're currently renting. Okay, so most of you. Now raise your hand again if your rent has gone up in the past couple of years. All right, so large majority of you. This is totally normal, and in Chicago, rents are going crazy, right? So on every street corner downtown, you see cranes. The majority of those new buildings are actually rental towers. So the demand is just astronomical, the prices are going up, and eventually people are going to be pushed into home buying because it just doesn't make sense at a certain point to keep paying that much rent. So secondly, interest rates, super low. Chris will talk about that later. That's his area of expertise. The third and fourth bullet point, these are big ones. So when you get a mortgage and you buy a condo, you're paying your mortgage every single month and therefore increasing your equity in the property every single month. So what I mean by equity is the amount that you actually own of the condo. So little by little, you slowly start to increase more and more of that equity. You own more and more of it, and then you owe less. So that happens over time. So when you're renting, you're writing a check every month, you're giving it to your landlord, and most likely he's using that to pay off his mortgage. So you can kind of see the two sides to this is track one, you're building your own equity and investing in yourself and doing great things. And the other side is you're actually investing in your landlord's equity. So it just is kind of food for thought, which would you rather be going forth? All right, so tax benefits. You can deduct your mortgage interest and your property taxes from your annual taxes. So that's a major reason people consider buying. And then lastly, pride of ownership. So this one for me, I see all the time, and I really cling to this particular reason just because buying a condo is an emotional experience. It really is. And it's one of the biggest things that you're going to do in your 20s and 30s. So, really taking pride in that, feeling like a sense of accomplishment, feeling like you went through these motions, and you did it on your own. There's no feeling quite like that. And I say that from having been through it by myself and also doing it with my clients, again and again and again. There's nothing like getting the keys and knowing that you did that. All right, so talking about the market in general right now, we're in a slower season. Midsummer, typically things shut down a little bit when it comes to Chicago real estate. I would say the dead of winter and the middle of summer are like both kind of the slower times, and then the spring and the fall, those are really busy times for real estate. With that said, inventory is at a historic low, and that's been this way for the past year in Chicago. What that means is there's not a ton of places out there for sale. And when the good ones come on the market and when they're priced well and they're hot listings, they're going to trade, within 1 to 2 days of being listed. And they're going to get multiple offers and they're going to sell either at list price or maybe a little bit above list price. So it's a competitive market for hot listings, but altogether, if you're kind of looking at market activity, it's slower than it would be in the spring or the fall. So to illustrate that low inventory, in June 2016, so past June, there were about 7,500 condos listed for sale. And that's down over 1,000 condos from the same time last year. So the numbers are, pretty far off from each other. That's a big drop. But it's not a sign of an unhealthy market in any means. It's just a sign of low inventory. It's either low inventory or high inventory. Good for sellers or good for buyers. Median sale prices up about 1% from last year. So median is, not the average sale price, but the most condos sold close to $325. So that's what we're looking at for the median. All right, and this is just a little snapshot of the hottest neighborhoods. Now, the way I made this graph and broke it down was based on market time. So, for example, in the West Loop last month, the average market time was 41 days. So that's pretty quick. And what that means is, there's a lot of places that sold in a couple days, and then there's some maybe overpriced places that threw that number off and took a couple months to sell. So West Loop, Wicker Park, and Humboldt Park, top three here, all in the 40s, in the low 40s. Those are hot neighborhoods and high demand over there. So you can see kind of the popularity is moving westward to those areas. As I'm sure you guys have noticed with, your friends wanting to live in Wicker Park, Bucktown, Westtown. It's very popular and it's kind of coming on the scene right now. And then behind are kind of the traditionally popular neighborhoods. So River North, Old Town, Lincoln Park, going north to Lakeview, Roscoe. I mean, those are still steadily popular. People still want those, so demand is just as high over there. All right, so now CK is going to take it from here and go through the super fun mortgage numbers stuff.
We're trying to keep everybody awake here. Space, got it. So I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the pre-approval process and why it's important to get pre-approved before you purchase. I think a lot of people, when they go to buy a home, think of buying a home like they would buy a car. They go out, they go to open houses, they test drive some houses, they fall in love with the house, and they think, oh, crap, I got to figure out how I'm going to get my mortgage for this place. I think that's kind of the wrong way to look at it. I think you want to think financing first, find out what you're going to be pre-approved for, find out what's within your budget, and at the end of the day, really what's comfortable affordable for you. So I stress knowing before you buy and figuring that part out of it before you go out and work with an experienced real estate agent like Melanie. The last piece why you want to get pre-approved early is because you want to have the strongest offer when you're putting in an offer in a competitive market like we have here. The reality is sellers aren't going to accept an offer without a pre-approval letter unless you're buying cash, and then God bless you, that's a great position to be in. But you want to have the strongest offer possible so that when you're looking at places and you put an offer in, you can be prepared to win that house if you fall in love with it. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, but we do general pre-approval, and we'll pre-approve you up to whatever the limit is at the end of the day. But I want to make sure that fits within your budget. And when you do a general pre-approval and you go out there and you find a place, then I can also do a property-specific pre-approval letter for you to give the seller the peace of mind that you're going to be able to get financing for this property and make you stand out amongst maybe a couple other offers that have general pre-approvals from a big bank. The pre-approval process, typically what happens when you want to get pre-approved is we have an initial phone conversation. And in that conversation, I'm going to talk to you about your goals with the purchase, what your time frame is, what you're looking to get out, how much you're looking to put down, and really what your budget is. And I also want to figure out what questions you have. Everybody's situation is different. I think it's great that we have the internet now to look up stuff, to find things online. But as the great Abraham Lincoln said, don't believe everything you read on the internet. Everybody's situation is a little different, and people buying a condo might have a different experience than people buying a single family home. If you're doing Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac financing, it's going to be different than VA, FHA financing. So my goal is to find out your situation, set you up with the right financing, and answer the questions you have so that you can be best prepared for your home search. The next step would be to gather all the information. Basically, we would get your name, address, date of birth, income, assets, everything short of a vial of blood. And then we would get the documentation to back that up. It sounds like a lot, but really you want to be as prepared as possible so you can avoid any potential hurdles down the road. So I'll ask for the basic pre-approval documentation, tax returns, W-2s, pay stubs, bank statements. Like I said, it sounds like a lot, but typically it takes maybe 30, 45 minutes. And that will give you the peace of mind knowing that you're going to be able to get the financing for your property. Once we've gotten all that, we'll pull your credit report, we'll review everything, set up a follow-up call, and discuss the pre-approval. And I can issue the pre-approval, general pre-approval, like I said, up to $300,000 with a monthly payment of $2,100, whatever the case may be. You go out, connect you back with Melanie, you go out, find a place, and then, like I said, we can get you a property-specific pre-approval from that. Big question I get all the time is, how much do I need for a down payment? I think one of the big holdovers from our parents' generation, what they've told us is that you have to have 20% down to buy a home. And that's not the reality anymore. It used to be the reality. The 20% threshold now is really to get around private mortgage insurance because FDIC is going to insure mortgages up to 80% of the home's value, so the buyer has to come up with private mortgage insurance if they put down less than 20%. And we can walk through options if you're looking, 5% up. You can do as little as 3% down up to as much as you want to put down from there. And really, you want to work with the lender to figure out what's comfortable for you. I have Excel spreadsheets. We have any numbers people in here? Raise your hand if you're a numbers guy. Melanie's the numbers guy. But Excel spreadsheets to help you guys figure out what's the best price range for you when you're actually looking at properties. You can punch in the taxes, punch in the HOA dues, to figure out what that monthly amount's going to look like. So you can do a little bit of research on your own and figure out what's going to be most comfortable for you. And we'll cover this in our conversation, but you want to figure out what the monthly housing expense is going to be. You're going to have to take into account all kinds of things like your principal and interest, mortgage insurance, if you're putting down less than 20%, taxes, HOA dues, and homeowners insurance. Typically, what's going to be comfortable for people is going to be about 1/3 of their gross monthly pay. So you make $6,000 a month gross, you're probably going to be pretty comfortable in the 2,000 range. That's not to say we can't take it up higher than that, but that's typically where most people fall with their average debt load. And then the other question, last question I get is, what is my interest rate? The interest rate is going to be based on your situation, and it's going to be based around the particular details of your purchase. So there's a couple different factors that go into play when it comes to figuring out what your interest rate is. The biggest one, I'm sure probably everybody's heard about, is credit score. Everybody's should have a good idea what their credit score is now. It's a good thing that people have access to freecreditreport.com, and I encourage people to check their credit score regularly. But depending on your credit score, that's going to affect what your interest rate is. Somebody who has a 740 credit score is going to be a different rate than somebody who has a 640 credit score. Another big component is going to be your down payment on the account. Like I said, you can put down as little as 3%, but you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck in terms of a lower interest rate if you can put down 25% on a contract, just with the way Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac have set things up with their pricing. So it's not everybody can put down 25%. I couldn't put down 25% when I first bought my condo, but that's if you're looking to get the lowest interest rate possible on a condo, that's what's going to be giving you the best rate. Loan amount, depending on how big your loan amount is, you might get a better interest rate if you have a higher loan amount. Property type, single family homes versus condos can give you a different interest rate. And then time to close. If you're closing in 30 days, your rate's going to be different if you're closing in 90 days. But the bottom line is that your interest rate is going to be floating until you go under contract. Melanie, you have a closing date set in that contract. That's when you can, quote unquote, lock in your interest rate, set that interest rate so that then over the next 30 years, that's the rate you'll be paying on the mortgage. Brief history of interest rates. If you've talked to your parents about buying a home, I'm sure they probably told you when they first bought their home, interest rates were 19.5%, and they had to walk both ways uphill to go get back home. But as you can see, rates have obviously come down. The average over the last 30 years there, 40 years has been about 6.5%. When I pulled this chart, this is the most recent data I could get, 4.14%. With that Brexit, the rates have come down even more. So we can thank our friends across the pond for lowering interest rates. Interest rates are probably closer to about 3.5%, 3.75%, depending on your situation. And this is the chart of current mortgage rates. As you can see, rates have been coming down even since last year. Most recent data we have is about 3.5% if you have the most optimal situation, 740 credit score, putting down 20% on a condo. Now, people ask me, why should you work with United Home Loans? To give you a little background about what we do, we are a local family-owned mortgage banker. We're based in the western suburbs. We've been in business 15 years now as of last May. And really, we know the Chicago area. We're accountable. I have built my business personally on referrals and my reputation through realtors such as Melanie. You know how I work and my company works, and as well as the Yelp page, which I encourage people to look at. When you go and talk to your lender, you want to know what kind of a lender they are. Okay? There's kind of different types of lenders. There's banks, Chase, Bank of America, U.S. banks of the world. There's going to be mortgage brokers who work with multiple lenders, but broker the loan out, meaning they don't actually do anything in-house in terms of underwriting and closing. And then you're going to have mortgage bankers. Mortgage bankers are like myself. We combine some of the best of both worlds between a traditional bank and a mortgage broker. And that we work with 14 different lenders to shop your loan program, shop your interest rate once you're under contract, and then we process, we underwrite, close the loan in-house to make things as smooth as possible throughout the process. Like I say, we're a one-stop shop for all things real estate. You know, I personally refer my clients downtown to work with Melanie. Trust her. I know that she works very well with clients, and she has the same kind of mentality about the client service side of things as we do. And then finally, you know, we're going to be staying in touch with you after the loan closes. We're not just a one-off transactional kind of shop. We're going to come and talk to you about refinancing down the road if that makes sense, checking in typically once a year just to see how things are going, see if you need anything. And you can always call and check with us if you have any questions or concerns in the future. And with that, after you've been pre-approved, turn you over to Melanie to start the home search now.
Okay, so my part is the fun part. His is the numbers and the blah, 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 but this part is good, I promise. Also, I'm super pumped that you guys have a fridge full of LaCroix. My favorite ever, so it's a good day. Okay, so what is an agent? Before I was in this job, I truly thought an agent was what I saw on Bravo, $1 Million Listing. I thought my life would be me driving around in a fancy car and negotiating deals at Big and Olive and all that stuff. And I just had in my mind what I thought it would be like. So it was kind of a crash course when I realized all of the stuff that, the back end, all the paperwork, all the other things that go into the job. And it's definitely not as glamorous as it is in the TV shows. So I don't know how they do it. Somehow they live that life. But, okay, so broadly, an agent is someone that represents a buyer or a seller. And your job is to guide them through the entire transaction. So for a first-time buyer, it starts at, the initial coffee consultation where you're talking about what you want and all of that. And then it goes all the way to the closing and then hopefully beyond there. So you become kind of their point of reference for this entire search process. So agents follow the law of agency. Well, most agents follow the law of agency. And what it says is that the agent's fiduciary responsibility is to the client. So fiduciary, what that means is that above all else, the agent is protecting the client's best interest. So if I'm representing Lamb as a buyer, I am not working for the seller. I am not working for Lamb's dad. I'm not working for my company. I'm not working for me. I'm really making every decision in the best interest of Lamb. So that's kind of the mindset that agents have to have. It has to be customer first. And, you'll see as we go on why it has to be that way. So we only make a commission when the deal closes. Okay, a lot of people are going to hear that and they're going to say, well, I don't want to work with a realtor because they're just going to push me to buy the very first place I see. And that may be true for certain brokers, but I would say most of us won't act that way. And we understand kind of the long-term search process. It takes a while to find the one, it's like dating, it's like getting married. You have to kind of go through the process for months and months and months until finally you understand what it is you were looking for all along. So, because of that, we're building a business too, right? So we can't build a business on pushing people toward making quick decisions. We want to provide the best possible service. And really, when it comes to home shopping, the best service is being patient with your clients and really, being there with them every single step of the way. So that's a big one. And then lastly, we invest attention, time, effort, knowledge, and money into the client relationship throughout the whole process. So your agent kind of becomes your number one wing person for a couple months. So a couple more reasons to work with a realtor. The first one, a lot of people don't know, but for a first-time buyer, it's free to use a realtor. The way we get paid is by the seller. So how it'll work is the seller will pay his realtor, and then his realtor will pay me, and then I'll give a little bit to my company, and the other broker gives a little bit to their company. So the commission, that nut, whatever it ends up being, gets split to 4 different parties, but ultimately what you need to know is that it never comes out of your pocket, and you're not paying me anything up front, or ever. So secondly, we've got access to every property on the multiple listing service, or the MLS. So if you see a property on Redfin, Trulia, or Zillow, it started on the MLS. That's like the starting point for anything listed in all of Chicago, the suburbs, and all of that. Reasons you kind of want to be on the front edge of the MLS is because there's a 24 to 48 hour delay before properties are actually sent to the public feeder sites. So a lot of times someone will send me something on Redfin and be like, oh my gosh, look at this. It's sold within 8 hours of being online. Well, it looks like that on Redfin, but it was actually listed on the MLS 1 to 2 days beforehand, and somebody with an agent scooped that property up before it went out to all the feeder sites. So it really behooves you to be checking MLS listings, hooked up with an agent, so that you have somebody that's kind of got the eyes and ears to get something before it goes out to the general public. All right, third, market knowledge and analysis. This is a biggie. You want someone that understands the market and somebody that's going to be able to explain to you why this unit is priced at this much and this one is priced at this much. Because really, this is just a giant purchase that you're making, and you want somebody that's going to be able to explain those numbers to you. Fourth, support through one of the biggest and most expensive life events. I kind of touched on this earlier, but it's emotional to buy a condo, and it's a lot. So when you're representing someone as an agent, you're not only their realtor, but you're a therapist in a lot of ways. You're helping them deal with the emotional ups and downs of the process, and you're kind of acting as a confidant and just somebody that can kind of help diffuse all the feelings that come along with buying a condo. And I'm not saying that to scare you. It's not like it's like a gut-wrenching experience, but there's just a lot. It's high stakes, so you want someone that's in your corner and that can connect with you in that way. And then the last one, we are professional negotiators who are going to fight to get you the lowest price possible as a buyer. People meet me and they're like, oh, yeah, right. Like, I don't think she could be a fierce negotiator. But I promise, I'm nice when I'm client-facing, but when I'm agent-facing, like, shark. I'll get the price down, I promise. Okay. Favorite Modern Family realtor, Ninja and the Blazer. Okay, so how does the search process work? It pretty much works the way it does on HGTV, so I'm not going to get too detailed, but basically we'll meet for coffee, we'll talk about what you want, we'll talk about your timeline and what's important to you, and then I'll go through this entire thing in immense detail so that going into it, what to expect at what stage of the process. So from there, I'll set you up on an MLS search, and you'll start getting listings emailed to you every single day. So you'll be checking those listings, but at the same time, if you're like me, you're also kind of wanting to take your own control of it. So you'll be on Redfin, Trulia, and Zillow all the same, sending me links, sending me things that you're interested in. And I mean, I totally encourage that. I have certain clients that will only stick to the MLS and just kind of rank things as they get sent to them. But I have other clients that I'll meet them at the first consultation, and they'll be like, hey, I've got 5 places I already want to see. I found them on Redfin. Like, can you set up the showings? So it's totally whatever your prerogative is. Either way, as long as I get sent the property, I can show it to you. So from there, we kind of start to narrow down the list, and we make private showing appointments. A showing is about 10 minutes. It's me, it's the selling agent, and it's you. We walk through the condo, we open the closets, we look at the appliances. We're like looking at everything that you possibly could want to see, because when you're clicking through pictures online, it's very misleading. It never ends up looking as it does online. So you want to get in the places in person and kind of just get your bearings and get a feel for it. At the same time, depending on what your timeline is, so say you have a couple months to find a place and you're in no rush, you're going to be going to open houses on the weekend. Open houses are awesome because you can go to them at your leisure. You can go to brunch in Lincoln Park and then stroll down Webster or whatever and just walk in and out of whatever place that you want to see. The only thing that I do warn people about open houses is that realtors have them to meet clients and like pick up clients. So if you're going to open houses and you're working with me, I'll give you a fat stack of my business cards, and you just you don't even speak to them. You just walk by and flash the card and peruse on through. So that's open houses and showings. So you're kind of doing both, narrowing it down, and eventually you're going to find something that you love. And it sounds cliche, but when you get into that place that you're going to buy, you know it, you feel it, and you don't have to think about it too long. You know, it's not like, oh, I kind of like it, I'm not really sure. It's like, no, like, hold the phone, we're gonna write an offer right now. So that's how that all works. And then, okay, you found the place that you want to make an offer on. You're super excited. There's a couple things that we're going to do beforehand just to protect, again, your best interests. So the first is running a comparative market analysis, or a CMA. And what this is pretty much just comparing the unit for sale that you're interested in to all the other comps in the building that have closed in the past maybe 6 months. So what we're doing is we're looking for trends, right? We're going to say, oh, okay, unit 302 sold for 300,000, but 402 sold for 280. My unit is listed at, 315. How is that possible? Well, let's look at the pictures, let's compare, let's kind of examine the terms of every single sale. Was it cash? Was it finance? And you kind of just take a step back and take a real scientific approach. Because what we're doing is what an appraiser is going to do in, a month from now. So we're kind of wanting to cover our bases. Don't make a decision based on how you feel about the property, but make a decision based on what the numbers are actually saying. So from there, we'll pick a price after doing the CMA and looking at everything. We're going to pick a closing date. So the closing date is essentially the day that you get the keys and become the owner of the property. Super exciting. And then we're going to pick an earnest money deposit. Earnest money is kind of complicated, and I feel like I could probably teach a whole seminar just about earnest money, but just to keep it simple, earnest money is money that is applied to your down payment at closing that you're paying up front. And the reason you're doing that is to say, I am earnest about this property. I'm not going to walk away. I'm not going to go put offers on 5 different properties because this is the one I want. So here's my cash to prove it. And that money gets held by, one of the agents in the transaction. Their company will actually cash the check and hold it in an escrow account. So earnest money, there's a lot of ways that you can get that money back. There's a lot of loopholes, but there's also situations where you can't get your earnest money back and, you have to go through with the purchase. So, like I said, that's a whole conversation. We could talk about that in detail later, but what you need to know is that you'll make an initial earnest money deposit when you're making this first offer if it gets accepted. So from there, we pick those 3 things. I'll send you a contract over email, and you'll just click and sign. Super easy. Chris will whip up a pre-approval letter for the property-specific address. We just did this together this morning. It's exciting. And then we'll write a note to the seller. So a note to the seller. This is not a thing that is super common in Chicago real estate, but I like to have my clients do it just because it gives you that much extra of an edge. So for me, I know you guys are probably like, oh, she's like all emotion. But real estate really is, a deeply emotional thing. And if you're buying a condo off somebody that has been living there for the past 10 years, raised their baby there, gutted the place, did all this work, there's going to be quite a bond between the seller and their condo. And if you have any way to appeal to that side, that emotional side, then we're going to do it. So what it looks like usually is, dear homeowner, I visited your home on this day. I really loved the way the windows overlooked this. I loved what you did with the kitchen, blah, blah, blah. Saying all the things that you liked about the place and then saying a little bit about yourself. So it's short. It's a couple paragraphs, but it really does make a difference. And I've had many a deal where my client's offer was a multiple offer situation. We were not the highest offer, but it was this note that sealed the deal, and they ended up picking our offer because the seller is like, well, now I can't imagine going with anyone else because I just read this super sweet letter. So it doesn't always happen, but if there's a possibility of it happening, why not throw it in there? So from there, I'll take that little package, I'll present it to the other party, and then we'll go back and forth making counter offers. It totally varies. Sometimes they'll accept your first offer. Sometimes you go back and forth, 5 or 6 times. But eventually, you're going to meet in the middle with the seller, and you're going to agree on a number. Everyone's going to sign off, and you're going to begin the next steps of the process. So this is just an example of what a purchase contract looks like. Really easy peasy, fill in the blanks. It's, not much. This is the part that can get a little bit complicated. So I'll try to explain it as clearly as I can. So after you agree on your number, you go under contract. And once you're under contract, there's a bunch of things that will happen right away. So the first thing is you're going to hire a home inspector, and you're you're going to hire a real estate attorney. So these two people kind of become your two like soldiers in this week of attorney review period. So your inspector is going to come out to the condo. He's going to check everything. He's going to spend an hour there. He's going to look for mold. He's going to look for moisture. He's going to look at the ages of the appliances and the HVAC and all of that stuff. He's going to basically test for anything that could potentially go wrong for you as the buyer. So once he does that, he'll send you an inspection report. You'll have it all written down for you. You'll send that inspection to your attorney. And then me, you attorney, and you will all kind of powwow and say, you know what, these are issues for me. Like, I would like the seller to fix the broken shower door before I move in. Or, you know, I would like the seller to put aside X amount of dollars so that I can buy a new window unit because the one in the condo is not working. That's not fair. So what'll happen then is your attorney will start making requests from the other party. And they're either going to ask for credits at closing, so money, or they're going to ask the seller to fix things. It's totally personal preference. I would say, you know, if you're a mixer fix it kind of guy, then take the money and fix it yourself. But if you're somebody that really doesn't want to deal with any of that and you just want to move in, then you can ask the seller to fix certain things. One caveat about the inspection is that it's not required, but it's highly, highly encouraged. So I would even say when you're buying new construction, so that's brand new property that nobody has lived in, still do an inspection just because you never know. And this is for your, you know, it's a safeguard for you to make sure that you're 100% comfortable with what you're buying. It's like shopping. If you buy a dress and you wear it for a day before taking the tags off, it's like that. So this whole, I mean, you shouldn't do that. You should, if you're going to buy the dress, you should pay for the dress and not return it. But you know what I'm saying. Like, you're trying it before you buy it. So, okay. At the same time, your attorney is also going to be reviewing everything about the whole condo building. So your inspector is concerned with what's within the four walls of the unit, but your attorney is also going to look at everything in the building. So the building's budget, the building's reserves, the homeowners association's rules, all of that stuff. Just because you want to know what you're getting into ahead of time before it's too late to back out of the deal. So this period right here is called the attorney review period. What you need to know, it takes about 7 days to get through everything. During that 7 days, you can walk away from the deal at any time. So if you get cold feet, you can walk away. If you do the inspection and decide you don't like, you know, the problems that came up, you can walk away. If a new property comes on the market that you like better, you can also walk away. So really, no matter what goes on, you can always get your earnest money back. The only money lost is the couple $100 that you spent having the inspector come out. I would say usually once a first-time buyer gets to this point, they're very committed to the property, and it's rare to walk away, but you can if you want to, and people like having that knowledge that, you know, if worse comes to worse, they can get out scotch-free. So that'll close attorney review. Once that ends, 7 days, you're going to start working hand in hand with your lender here. So what your lender's going to do is you're going to fill out all the paperwork, all the loan docs, all that good stuff. And he's going to order an appraisal on the property. And what an appraisal is basically a third-party appraiser will come out to the place and say, this is my opinion of work. This is what I see this condo being valued at. If that number comes back and it is what you paid for it or more than what you paid for it, then that's great. But if it comes back as less than what you paid for it, then there's a couple of options for how to remedy the situation. You can walk away from the deal and get your money back. You can have the seller come down to that number and you can close at that deal, or you can make up the difference in cash. With condos, for the most part, appraisal issues don't come up at times just because it's pretty straightforward. It really becomes an issue when you're buying like a single family home or something like that, a more unique product. So I wouldn't worry too much about the appraisal. But the appraisal, additionally to the inspection, they're safeguards. So an appraisal is protecting you from overpaying because if the bank isn't going to loan you money, then you can't buy the condo. So it has to be worth what you're paying. Otherwise, the deal is not going to come together. So from there, we're going to have the final walkthrough, and that's normally just the day before closing. We go back to the place, you and me. We take some fun pictures of you hanging out in your almost new condo. What else do? We look for dead bodies. We're basically just like making sure the place is exactly as you remember it, because by this point it's been a month since you've been to the place. So you want to make sure, it hasn't flooded or they fixed what they said they were going to fix. It's just another time to make sure everything's okay. And then right after that, we'll go to closing. Closing usually takes place somewhere around the loop. It's kind of boring. Everyone is dressed in suits and no one smiles that much and you're signing like a big stack of papers. And I sit next to you and Chris, and we try to make it fun. But
Boring guy in the suit.
no, Chris is a fun guy in a suit, but the other guys are boring guys. Yeah, I mean, closing really what it is you're signing the final paperwork and you're actually becoming the sole owner of the property. You get the keys, and really once it's done and sigh of relief, you're finished, that's when kind of the excitement sets in and you realize, like, this is my place now. I can plan my housewarming and gut the kitchen if I want to and all that good stuff. So that's pretty much how it works. Door to door, from finding the place that you love and actually closing on it, I would budget 5 to 6 weeks. If you're in a time crunch, Chris can get it done in 4 weeks? Maybe 3 to 4 weeks. We can get it done in 4 weeks. But, just to kind of make sure you have a bit of a buffer and enough time for all this to happen, I usually would cut people 5 to 6 weeks. So that's important to consider. If your lease is ending at a certain time, you're going to want to make sure your broker knows that ahead of time, just so that you can plan accordingly and, make room if there's hiccups in the transaction or anything like that. You don't want to be like super pressed for time. And with that, we don't have any more slides for you, but we do have like 10-ish minutes for questions if anybody has anything that we didn't address or want to talk about. Question?
I've heard this about first-time home buyers tax benefit and that they will pay their taxes back, but there's some sort of, deduction. You know anything about that?
First-time home buyer tax deduction? That would be you.
There are some, you've referred to the grant program maybe?
Yeah, I think it's a program that they didn't look like.
First-time home, IDA.
There's an IDA program that you can work with one of the IDA sponsored lenders on. I just tell people to kind of read the fine print on that. It's a great program if you need the funds for down payment, but it's structured as like a second loan on the property that you repay with 0% interest over 10 years. And typically, there's going to be an interest rate that's about 0.5 to 0.75% higher than what the market rate is, because nothing is free, especially in Illinois. but it is a good program. It's just, read the fine print before you sign up for that. There are good programs. There's supposedly one coming out in the city of Chicago as well, kind of structured the same way. I spoke to one of the people who works at one of the servicers on the mortgage, the same kind of setup where it's going to be repaid over 5 years and there's a higher than market interest rate. So good programs out there. Just make sure you read the fine.
Over here.
Usually we talk about my options. I'm a little bit confused about the difference between what the benefits are for getting a condo versus getting people. Could you talk a little bit about what the differences are?
Sure. So there's tons of different options for buying. We tailor this specifically to condos because for city people, that seems to be what people buy. What you're buying in a condo is, you're actually owning that portion of the real estate, but you're also becoming a part of that homeowners association. So it's a lower maintenance way to live. A lot of young people aren't going to go and buy a single family home right away because, there's a lot of maintenance with that. Whereas in a condo, you're paying a monthly due to the association for them to, get your cable, your internet, your heat and your cooling. That's all run by the building instead of you having to buy those things and maintain them on your own. So that's kind of condo versus single family. But in Chicago, a lot of first-time buyers will buy townhomes, for example, and those are lower maintenance. They're not going to be a homeowners association per se, where you're paying somebody else to do all these things. You're going to take care of the yard, but it's less to take care of. It's just a little bit less costly than single family home. And then there's also a co-op option in Chicago, which most first-time buyers will not go for, because in co-ops, your monthly dues are typically in like the $1,000 plus range. So it's very, very expensive to live in a co-op, but they're beautiful vintage buildings. A lot of them are on Lakeshore Drive, and they're like historic pieces of Chicago history. So that would be co-op versus condo. And in a co-op too, you're buying a share of the building, versus in a condo, you're actually buying the property and you're owning those four walls, what's within the four walls. Does that answer? We'll talk. Yeah.
Can you go more into HOA fees and I guess maybe some potential draft look for
Totally.
what the range is around here
Yep.
for HOA?
So that's an awesome question. So the HOA fee, what it is a monthly fee that you're paying to your association. In a lower to mid-rise building, so when I say that, I mean like maybe a 3-flat walk-up, your assessments are going to be in $100 to $200, something really minimal like that. If you're buying in a mid-rise, you're going to budget maybe $300 to $400 for your monthly dues. If you're buying in a high-rise, your assessments can be anywhere from like $400 all the way up to $1,000, depending on the size of your property. So what you're doing is you're paying them money for the building to maintain certain parts of the building. In an older building, you're typically going to have higher assessments. So that's something to look out for is, if you're looking for pitfalls and assessments, older buildings typically will have higher assessments, and they're also going to have what's called special assessments, which is where the building does a certain project and bills everybody in a condo, a certain percentage of that project based on how much square footage you actually own in the building. So to illustrate that, we just did a deal in a building that was putting new balconies on for the units in the back. So every single unit in the whole condo building had to pay $5,000 to $10,000 as a one-time payment on top of their monthly payment, even if they didn't have a balcony. So it was like the guys in the front with no balcony were having to pay this huge amount of money for the guys in the back that did have a balcony. So that happens in condos, and it's not fair, but life isn't fair. So just budget for things like that happening, because you never know. Yeah. But you know what? During the attorney review period, you really do get a good hold for what is potentially going to happen in your building. You'll know ahead of time if, the next couple of years are going to bring big special assessments like that.
Are there any huge differences in buying a home in the suburb versus buying in the city?
I mean, not really. I wouldn't say so. The process works exactly the same. You're always going to have the inspection, the attorney. You're going to have the season of looking and hunting and finding. So I would say it's just a totally different product, and you're going to want a realtor that specializes in that certain suburb, in that area, that knows the market out there. But other than, market stuff, it really works the same as it does when you're buying any sort of piece of property.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
For you, actually bringing someone along, what's the number that you guys had to take?
When we're looking at loan approval. So when it comes to loan approval, I like to tell people it's kind of like a stool. You have to have all the legs for the loan to stand up and be approved. So big things are going to be credit, where your credit score is, and then what's reporting on there in terms of liabilities and any derogatories. Income, how much you make, how frequent it is it salary or is it commission, bonus, and then your assets. How long you have the assets, are they yours, are they a gift, where do they come from? And you can have two of those three things, but if you have amazing income, great assets, but you have a 500 credit score, you're going to have a tough time getting a loan. Same thing, if you have great credit, you have a lot of assets, but you just started a new commission job and you don't have any history making that commission, you're going to have a lot of trouble getting a loan. So there's no real one spot that people look at, really more of a inclusive kind of thing, but those are the major things that they're going to look at when it comes to. I encourage people to be very honest, very forthright with their lender, because you'd rather know what the potential pitfalls are up front before you find that dream home and, whoops, we forgot to tell you about it. So, does that make sense?
I need to add how that.
Yeah.
friend of mine, he's an agent in Portland. He said that he has a lot of agents that won't even work with the buyer until they are pre-approved.
Yeah.
They wouldn't even go for showings yet because to them, that's a big risk.
It's like that here, I would say. If someone is not fully pre-approved, I would at least want them to be qualified, or at least maybe had a conversation with Chris. Just because once you start going for showings, that's a lot of time invested. And if you get to that point and then find out that the person's not even able to buy, the realtors on both sides are going to be frustrated with that. The buyer is going to be frustrated with that. So really, to set expectations, you get pre-approved before you even talk to an agent. And also because you want to know what you can afford, and you don't want to be looking at things that are outside of your price range and then kind of get fixated on that and then get knocked down to earth when you're like, oh, I can only afford $100,000 less than that.
Yeah, people get upset with me for asking for so much information, for asking tax returns, based on, but not said, the reality is that her income, the seller's agent's income, their reputation's all based around this deal closing, and if there's something that comes up that we could have foreseen up front, then they're not. So I try to get as much up front as possible.
Anyone else? Yeah.
With credit score, is it, do they base kind of how they evaluate the score on grouping? So say you said 740 is kind of the target. So is it like 735, is that really category below, or is it just not just below?
Good question. So when you have your credit pulled, it's going to be a mortgage credit report. Nobody has one credit score. You get different credit scores based on home loan, car loan, credit card, etc. And you'll get 3 scores from 3 different bureaus. And the lenders all go off with the middle scores for underwriting, for the interest rate. So the different brackets are going to be basically 700 to 719 is going to be one bracket for interest rate, 720 to 739 is going to be one, and 740 above is going to be.
So if you're at 739, you want to get past that 740.
If at all possible. And when we look at your credit report, we'll be able to see how long you have, if this balance, which is really close to the limit of the credit card, you should pay that down, and that'll help you chip up the credit score. So there's certain things that we can see that will potentially help. Good question.
Last question. Anyone have one? Something juicy?
We'll be sticking around if you guys do have any other questions. Just chat.
Yeah, thank you so
Thank you,
much for
guys.
coming. Leanne is going to email out the presentation,
Yep,
correct?
I will.
And then we've got business cards up front if you want business cards, and we're here to chat if you want to talk.
Thanks, guys.
This presentation.